You're listening to the Broken Meeple Show, a podcast that speaks passionately about board games for the benefit of those who play them. My name's Luke Hector, best known for the Broken Meeple YouTube channel, and I'm an everyday gamer just like you. And I'll be talking about reviews, top 10s, and just about anything that connects me to board games, as long as I have a tea or coffee in hand, that is. So grab a cup, relax, and enjoy. And remember, it's only a game. Hi everyone, Luke Hector here. Oh blimey, it's been a while, and for some reason this platform has undergone some changes, so you might notice some weird visual effects, or mainly you just might notice that it's a bit brighter for now. Like the camera is picking up a lot more light than it used to in a room with curtains shut and a light bulb on, but hey, it means you can see me, so whether that's a good thing or not, that depends on you. But yes, hello, episode 102. It has been a while, so the first part of this podcast has got to explain a few things. It has been some time, but there are reasons for that. The last one I think I did was the Essen preview one, I think. It was like episode 101, where just before Essen I decided, right, I was going to preview a bunch of stuff. Well, and that might have not even been a full podcast, that might have just been a sort of summary. But the thing was that I had to go to Essen itself, so that coincided with the normal 2 weeks of doing this podcast. So that obviously I wasn't going to do anything that weekend. Then I came back from Essen on the last day with COVID, which knocked me out for an entire week. So, I'm fine for it now, so don't worry. But the problem was that I had to basically, obviously be out of action for that time. Then I was recovering from the COVID, like in terms of getting my energy back up and dealing with a backlog for work. So I had to just basically go through hell at work trying to catch up with everything. Not to mention there were 1 or 2 milestones at work that I really had to get past because they were stressing me out to the point of like chest pain. But so a lot of stuff's been going on. Now, things are a little bit better at the moment. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. November is going to be a bit of a work slog, but I reckon that if I just keep my head down and keep at it, things will be fine. And then by the time I go on this cruise in December, everything's going to be a bit more hunky-dory. But it just meant that, going to Essen and then recovering from COVID, and then 2 weeks after that, there just hasn't been time to do a podcast, or enough health. So that's why you've had a bit of a break for a while. And spoiler alert, there's going to be another one coming up, because obviously I've got today, and then I got 2 weeks time, and then I think there'll be a room for another one, so 3 episodes total, because it was the 3rd today, so the next one will be the 17th, and then the next one would be the 1st of December. So there's only going to be 3 episodes before the year ends, because obviously after that, I go on the cruise, and then don't come back until after Christmas, I come back before Christmas, and then go home for Christmas, and then in the new year I return. So you're not going to get another podcast from me for a fair while after that anyway, so you better enjoy these 3 episodes. But yeah, that's the thing. There's just been quite a lot going on in my life, health-wise and work-wise and convention-wise, because I think maybe the last time I could have maybe done an episode would have been last weekend, but then I went to HandyCon. So I was away for another convention, and I've got GridCon coming up God blimey, yeah, next one is the 17th. That's the same weekend as GridCon. That might cause problems with that episode. I might have to do it a day or so late, maybe do it on the Monday, but we'll have to see. It's quite a busy period in the autumn. I do a lot of conventions, I do a lot of work, I do a lot of stuff. So as much as the autumn is quite fun for me, and I'm so glad that it's not heat waves and I can wear a t-shirt and not overheat, I have to kind of, take it easy. I mean, I haven't even, done my hair or anything like that today. But yeah, so just a lot going on, but all in all, things are on track, so we'll start resuming. And certainly there's been a lot of games I've had to play. The only thing that's slightly bad with me health-wise now is my throat. I think it's never fully recovered as a result of both Essen and COVID, because I can only talk for so long before my throat gets a bit sore, and I've been doing a lot of recording stuff lately, so I think my voice is getting a little bit exhausted, so I might have to just be careful with the length of this episode. But I wanted to get something out because some of you obviously wanted more content from me. So generally, I mean, the channel has done quite a lot since then. I mean, we're on 24,500 subs, less than 500 subs to go before we hit the 25,000 milestone. So that's going to be a good day. But there's also been just quite a lot of content. I mean, since the last time I did an episode, what was that, mid-September? We had the podcast episode 101. So we had the full preview for Essen. Then I went to Essen, but then before that I had a couple of reviews for Invincible, Castle Combo, and Temple Code. Came back from Essen, did a full review, an aftermath episode of what was included in that, so you can certainly check out that if you want the full lesson report. And then I had to get started on all the pile up of games where there is just so much to cover. I mean, I got Arctic, Nocturne, SETI, Cascadia Roll Rights, Black Forest, Tea Garden, Duel for Middle Earth released yesterday, the Seven Wonders Duel replacement, and I've got Unconscious Mind is being edited as we speak, as well as the expansions to it. The Evenfall expansion needs to be edited. What else have I done? Let's Go to Japan needs to be edited. So a fair few have been recorded. They just need to be edited. But I've also got other stuff to play, like I'm playing through Explorers of Navoria at the moment. I've also got Evershade, which I'll give a little bit of a brief sort of preview at the moment, but I'm going to do a preview video for that. So that is currently underneath this desk being played at the moment. Inventors of the South Tigris just arrived in the post, so people are wanting me to review that. Hopefully it might have to be first impression. I mean, if I can get enough plays of it, I will, but it's a big game, it's complicated, so if I'm going to do it before I go on the cruise, it's going to involve getting it played rather promptly. But even with that not in mind, I mean, I've got, other ones down there. I bought Reef Project recently by Board and Dice to see what that was like. Obviously, I said Explorers and Navoria needs to get reviewed. I've got little ones like Conies and Tarot, the original game from Yellow, Asian Tigers, Kraftwagen, Station to Station from Alley Cat Games, a few Empress Force stuff like Midsummer Night's Dream, Kimono Memories or whatever it's called, their newish one. There's quite a few things that I still need to play and review. So it's going to take me a while to get through all these. The Evershade Evenfall expansion that needs to be edited. The Artifacts expansion for Veil of Eternity. Yeah, I'm kind of busy. Kind of busy. So there's a lot of games to get played, there's a lot of reviews to do, and the hope is that I can spread them out for the next few weeks, and if there's any left over, hopefully I've at least got them edited and ready so that I can have them upload while I'm on the cruise, because while I'm on the cruise, I'm barely going to have Wi-Fi, let alone any decent ability to do any blogging. So the cruise is a complete reset. No blog, no work, no nothing. Now, that's not to say I will be devoid of the internet. Hopefully, I'll be able to get some basic Wi-Fi and keep up to date with things. But certainly there'll be, sorry, a bit of a cough there. But there will be certainly no recording, editing, work, anything like that while I'm on the cruise. That is my official giving the middle finger effectively to 2024, which has certainly not been the best year for me, let's be honest, and saying this is my end of 2024, and then I go back and then officially end it with Christmas with the family, and then we can start 2025, fresh new look, fresh new look on life, fresh new perspective, and some improvements at work should have taken place by 2025 as well. So it's looking to be a much better next year. This year's just been a bit of a write-off, unfortunately. But yeah, thanks for everybody who's been commenting on the vids and sharing the content. And that, by all means, keep sharing it on social media. Stick it on Facebook groups whenever somebody asks a question like, oh, has anybody done anything on Black Forest? Or what are people's thoughts? Go share the review out and get the word out. I'll always appreciate that. But yeah, no hiccups, really. I mean, some decent views for a lot of those videos. Even the speed reviews are doing quite well for a speed review, obviously. I mean, speed reviews only get so many views, but I mean, Tea Garden's done pretty well. Duel for Middle Earth is climbing, but obviously my two main reviews, SETI and Black Forest, are doing very well, so, that's a good thing. But yeah, no real pushback, really. Although, I just want to get one thing a little bit clear, actually. When I rate games and things like that, because there's been a little bit of pushback with some of the ratings I've given lately. Firstly, A, it's a subjective opinion. I mean, come on. But also, B, you need to understand that when I give ratings for games, this doesn't work on a positive is a point and a con is another point, right? So every game has cons. There is no perfect game. There's always going to be flaws in the game. Even my top 5 favorite games of all time have flaws. But it's not a case that when I review a game that a con is a minus point. Every time I mention something slightly negative, I'm not saying, right, that takes it from a 10 to a 9, that takes it from a 9 to an 8. It depends on the whole feel of the game, the bigger picture, and whether the flaws I've mentioned detract a lot from the enjoyment for me. So, there are times when I say oh yeah, here's a few negative things I had about this, but there's a degree of negativeness. You know, there's negative flaws where it's catastrophically bad, a flaw, and then there's flaws where it's like, this irks me and makes this a little bit annoying, but you know what, I can get over it. And so you need to understand the degree of the con I'm making. But that also goes for pros. You know, I might say a lot of pros about a game, but that doesn't necessarily mean the game's a 10 out of 10. It just means that there's some good stuff here, but you know, some games may only excite me up to a point. And another thing to also bear in mind is that my top 100 and all those games, which I'll have to think about come 2025, for blimey, is that they don't necessarily follow, all right, I now just list all my 10s and now I just list all my 9s. I mean, for a majority, it's a bit like that. But sometimes I've got to rate games based on their individual merits. So, for example, I've rated Arctic and Castle Combo with 9 out of 10s. Now, that's not to say that those games are suddenly going to be in my top 50 of my top 100 all of a sudden. You know, there may be only so many times I want to play those in quick succession or for that, and there's a lot of good fillers. But for what they are, filler games, 30 minutes that get the job done, they are worth the 9 out of 10s. I mean, technically, you could argue that Love Letter is a pretty high rating for what Love Letter is as a micro game, but it doesn't mean I want to play Love Letter every 5 seconds. You know, it's you've got to think that there is a difference between the two. So, yeah, there's been a little bit of confusion with some ratings lately, and granted, SETI was a dubious one. I mean, it was a low 10 or a high 9. If you don't agree with me giving it a low 10, then by all means just assume I said the words high 9. I mean, either way, I'm still giving it a seal of distinction. Whether it's a 9 or a 10 shouldn't really matter. It's just an arbitrary number. It's whether it got the seal or not that's important, and one way or another, SETI would get, for me, a seal of distinction. You know, any flaws that might take it down from a 10 to a 9 do not detract from that point. So there's just that little bit to get across. But yeah, you know, plenty to look forward to. So, given that I've been away for a while, do I have anything much to talk about? Well, games-wise, yes, just not subtopics. I'll have to think of something good for the next episode. But now this one's just going to be pretty much a games I've played episode, where I just talk about some games I've played, be they previews or upcoming Kickstarters or games I've never heard of before. So it's quite a nice little mixed bag in this one. And I'm just going to go through them in turn, really. So we're going to start off with Baghdad, the City of Peace, which the title might as well mean nothing, because this is about as abstracted a point salad game as you can get. Minor little bits that might cater to the theme, but otherwise this literally could have been any city in the world and slightly changed. But that's just from a theme perspective. This is the new upcoming Kickstarter from Alley Cat Games, and it's the same designers that I believe have done some other particularly big games lately. Just looking at what's recent. Everyone keeps talking about Shackleton Base, A Journey to the Moon. I have still not played this. They did Sancor, Autobahn, Merv. They've done some pretty good pairing of games, this sort of pairing of games. And this is another one that they're doing. This is a very straightforward point salad game, and this is pretty much a fully mechanical game. And bear in mind, this is all looking at prototype and tabletop simulator components, but it's definitely a point salad through and through. You do mechanical little mini games, and these get you points. But I actually found this to be a pretty good, fun, smooth experience. It could do with maybe being a couple of turns shorter to make it just that little bit more tight, particularly with some ways that you can kind of cheese points in the last round. But all in all, I enjoyed this one. The rules are not complicated at all. Basically, it all revolves around this board, which is cut up into different segments that relate to different things. You've got the cards, you've got books you can collect, you've got the architect palace pieces you can build, you've got your own little side buildings you can build, you've got the sailing of ships. It's one of those style of Euros. But the idea is that if I can find a picture of a player board, preferably one with cards, that would be nice. I guess not, but essentially in this picture here, you've got your own player board, and there's spots where you take tiles from the main board, put them on your own, and it can trigger bonuses. That's all well and good. But you'll notice there's all these symbols in the various spots, and that's because these cards, you play a game a bit like the Viscounts of the West Kingdom conveyor belt, basically. So you have like 3 slots below your board, you put the cards in them, and they then sort of move along the conveyor belt, and as they drop off, they trigger other effects. There's one little ship sailing thing that does when you play the card, and that's about it. But otherwise, it's when they drop off. And some of them might even have little mini goals that if you have this when it drops off, you get another bonus. So you got to plan ahead. But I love Viscounts of the West Kingdom, and I love that mechanics. And now this is effectively a simplified, tweaked version of that mechanic for this point salad. So when you play the cards, they've got symbols at the top that power the various actions. So it's like, right, if I want to go if I want to go give medicine to these beggars or whatever, then fine, I've got to get a bunch of medicine symbols on mine. If I want to build, I need stone symbols. If I want to sail, I need ship symbols. And you play the cards how you like and try to power the actions, and you've got little bonus tiles and that you can grab to make life easier. And then on top of this, you move around the center board with this kind of rondelle system, where you move your guy to the next quarter, you pick up a tile, depending which tile you pick up and what it's next to is going to get cost money or cost favor, and these allow you to do these various mini games like collecting books or building buildings or building architect palace pieces, and you essentially are just trying to get the most victory points. It is a point salad through and through, but you obviously want to be efficient, and there's different ways to combo things for various bonuses, like doing well in one segment could combo well to do well in another segment and then score me points in that way. The variable setup and all that, as you would expect. It's just a very neat, smooth, light game. That's the thing. It's a smooth, light point salad. Yes, the theme is barely there. Yes, it's basically a mechanical game, but it doesn't take that long to play, as long as you haven't got AP players present, for sure. Or preferably that they're not handling kids at the same time. But you have a very simple rule set, you have a simple concept, and if you've played this type of game before, you'll pick it up in no time. And I love that little conveyor belt mechanic. I just found this a nice, I say pleasant, but a nice smooth experience. Now, is it enough for me to want to back it myself? Hard to say, but I could see myself maybe grabbing it on retail, to play it a bit, because it doesn't take that long and it's a simple one to teach, and you can have fun with it, creating little combos. And I do like a nice point salad, and this one's not going to take me like 2.5 hours, 3 hours to play. The conveyor belt system was done in Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Love that game. It's still a 10 out of 10 for me, but that one's a bit more rule set and a bit more harder to get to the table and play in a short space of time, whereas this one would be dead simple. And you always get a new card every round, so all the cards you use have got one use. Once they fall off, that's it, they're done. So you always keep collecting new cards, and you're trying to, maintain what it is you're trying to do with the new cards you get. So there's just some cool little, nice, neat little mechanics in here that just make this a smooth experience. I don't think I'll be doing preview vids on it, but I have played it, I enjoyed it, and I'll certainly keep an eye out for it when it's closer to retail release, at some point in 2025, I suspect. It can't take that much longer to get the Kickstarter up and running. I think it's going to be early 2025, and it does have 2025 as a release date, so something tells me this will be a Games Expo or Essen release next year, something like that. So yeah, keep an eye out if you just like simple point salads, because it's quite addictive. All right. Moving on, the next one is, I want to talk about a game called Rahua. Honestly, publishers, can you name your games things that we can pronounce and are easily recognizable? Rauha. All right, it's clearly got some meaning. It's either, does it say here what that actually is? No, it doesn't actually say what that is in the blurb. Well, that helps. I'm sure there's some lore thing behind it or whatever, and I'm sure somebody in the comments will explain, or I'll just Google it afterwards. But basically it's a mechanical game, so who the hell really cares about the title? But this is from Grrr Games, who apparently were the same people who did a pretty famous game a while back. I'd barely even heard of this publisher, and then I look at some of their other games and it's like, oh yeah, I'm not seeing much there, that's great. But I did notice that I don't know if they were the ones who pioneered Nidavellir, but they're certainly big on the names for who actually did it. And I wonder if Nidavellir was brought from somewhere else, because I think I've still got the game on my shelf, even though I haven't played it in ages. But if that's their own design and not just ported over from another one, then that's something to be proud of, because that's done quite well. But all these other ones like Artemis Odyssey, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtle Power Cars, Danny, Serrano, it's like, yeah, these are not games that I've heard a great deal about. But this one that I played at a recent club night is not a bad little game. It only takes about an hour to play. It can do up 2 to 5 players. And simply, you're basically creating this like 3x3 grid of biome cards on your board in order to score VP. Like I say, very mechanical. But you have this little marker that goes around the outside of your board for the turn orders. And after you've taken a card and placed it on, it activates that row or column, so you've got to plan ahead. The cards themselves have different biome symbols, and when you put 3 in a row of the same type, you get the special power of this entity or demon or whatever that basically gives you some cool ability until someone takes it off you, so it's got that thing. The placement of the cards either cost you crystals, which is the currency, or they're free if you put them in certain spots on your board, so you can kind of gravitate for that. But the main sort of thing is that it's basically an engine builder point game. You know, it is dry as a bone, and the artwork is questionable. I mean, I do like the fact that it's like combining beige with the dominant color of the card or something, so it does have quite a cool, clean look to it. But yeah, there's nothing to write home about. But the idea with this is that you've also got like a kind of like a left and right drafting thing. So like the first time your marker is on a moon or a sun symbol around the edge of the board, and basically if it's on the moon, you look to your left and go, right, I'll scoop up all these cards, pick one, and that's what I'm going to play. Then when it moves on to the next column, it will be a sun or a star or whatever, and then you look at the right hand side of you at those cards and draft one from there. So it's not quite I pick you choose, but it's basically a sort of semi-pseudo drafting mechanism of like, right, I'll look at these, I'm going to take this one, I don't reckon you'll take these ones later, but I know you're going to take this one, do I want to take that off yours, or I'd sort of do about my one? And yeah, that mechanism is pretty neat, although the problems that we did have is that it is kind of luck of the draw as to whether you get stuff that works with your engine. Like you might collect a bunch of a particular symbol and then nothing that scores for that symbol comes out of the deck. And there's not really anything you can do about that. There is no mitigation for the cards. It's just, you know, sucks to be you. But the game was neatish. I mean, getting these little powers can be quite cool, although it's a bit annoying to put something down, get a power, and then your opponent just happens to put down 3 of the same straight after and nicks the power off you. I mean, that's kind of, you know, a little bit of a downer. And you put these purple tokens on there to score them multiple times, so that's pretty neat. You know, you get to try and score certain tiles multiple times. But yeah, the game was fine. I mean, it was quick, it was easy, and it didn't take that long to go through, but there isn't really much of a theme here. It is purely mechanical, and luck of the draw does play a bit of a part in whether you'll do well with getting the right cards for your engine or getting these particular bonus powers. And some of the powers are definitely better than others. I mean, some will just get you straight up points or income, which is really useful, and others require you to spend a lot of something in order to get something good. But those ones you're not going to be able to trigger anywhere near as much as the other ones, which just get up straight nice income. So yeah, it's fine. It's a neat little game. I mean, I was quite surprised about it being neat, because when I looked at it, I thought, oh, this is going to be rubbish. But no, it was fine. You know, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. You know, it's above average. I don't think this is one I would say, you know, I recommend everyone to go out and get. But the persons who taught it to me only paid a tenner for it. I think for a tenner, you got a pretty decent game there that I would play again for the sake of an hour. But yeah, full price, I wouldn't pay full price for this, and it's not ranked that particularly highly. I mean, what ranking is it at the moment? It's definitely in the thousands. 3,212. So it could be worse, but it could be a damn sight better. So yeah, it's not bad. And, you know, it's fine. It does the job. You know, and you're talking about an hour. And best at 3, I agree. We played it at 3, and I don't think I'd want to play it with 4, and I certainly wouldn't want to touch this with 5. So, yeah, 2 or 3 players seems pretty good for this one. But yeah, does the job. Just nothing spectacular. It's nothing overly new, but it's just something neat and short, which at the time, given that we just played Explorers of Novoria with the expansion, was kind of like, yeah, we just need something quick now. A bit of a lovely coffee. All right, let's move on to the next one then. So, Minos, Dawn of the Bronze Age. Okay, so I've played this a couple of times, but I don't have a review copy yet. Although this has reminded me I also need to chase up Tim Eisner for my Canopy Evergreen review copy, because I was hoping to get that review before Christmas, and if it doesn't get sent to me anytime soon, it's going to be tricky to fit it in. But yeah, this one is another one that I'm expecting at some point. You know, they weren't giving them out at the show, or at least I didn't get one at the show, but they are, with their newsletter thing, supposedly sending them out after the fact. Hopefully I don't miss that newsletter. As far as I'm aware, I shouldn't. I always check my emails, but who knows if they've sent it already. Actually, no, I feel like I've responded to it already. I don't know, it's hard to keep up with correspondence. But this one I have now played a couple of times. I played it once at Essen, self-taught from the rulebook, and I played it at HandyCon. recently, so we played another 3-player game then, and they were both 3-player games. There are good and bad things to this. I mean, at the moment, my first impressions rate this at about a 7 out of 10. But there are some potential issues here, because on the one hand, this game looks great on the table. It is a very pretty color game. It also, it's got clean aesthetics. Graphic design's not bad. Could be better in some places, but it's not too bad. And it's 1 to 4 players. It says 90 to 150 minutes. We're going to get back on that. And it's got some clever card play. It's got a nice looking sort of board, some chunky pieces, and lots of artwork and cards. It looks more colorful than pretty much most of their fare. But it gives off a very misleading presence, because people think this is going to be a relatively light game. Oh my friggin' word, is it not a light game. This is not a Windmill Valley. This is multi-steps above Windmill Valley. This is a very heavy thinky game, and you wouldn't believe that just by looking at the board. Essentially what happens is you play over 4 rounds, and again, it's pretty mechanical. I mean, the theme is whatever, neither here or there. And what you have is, if you remember a game called Coimbra, you positioned dice, different color dice, on actions, and depending on whether it was low number or high number, give you turn order and your first choice of a card, for example. Well, it's the same thing here, which, granted, is excellent, because I do love that aspect of Coimbra. Coimbra had some balancing issues with the scoring, which was one reason that one kind of died. But in terms of the action sequence to move dice, if I can find a picture, here we go, yeah, with these little like wooden bits that you put the dice into, that bit is really cool. And it's the same here. You go on action spots, you draft the dice. If your dice add up to 9 or more in the same color, greys or wild, then you get to level up tracks. So that's already a consideration. But mainly you're also going, right, well, hang on, I want to do this particular action. But then if I put I mean, they've done it wrong here. I don't know what they've done here. I think somebody's just set it up for the photo, but this is not how it works. The idea is that the lower number goes on the left-hand side of the action. Oh, no, it is correct. I'm looking at it upside down. But basically, the lower the number, it goes on the left-hand side of the action. The higher numbers go on the right. Now, you have to do your actions in order from high to low, but the action is better on each bit if it's the lower number, because if it's on the left, it's worth, you get more action points than you do on the right. So there's a decent amount of planning and thought that has to go into that aspect, which is great. But the other bit I really like are these cards, because you draw and play a lot of these cards, and they've got costs, and then they've got a 7 Wonders style resource mechanism for discounts. You get the resources, and some are temporary, but some are permanent. And it's a case of, if you have the resource, you get a discount in money in order to build or play a card. But these cards give you loads of cool effects. Nice. But what they also do is that they've got this crown symbol at the bottom, and basically you can slide them underneath your board, and then every time you retrieve a die when we do the actions, depending on where it comes from, like on the card, this one says retrieve from a build action, you draw 2 cards and get 2 points. So you get to trigger this little, you create this little engine of retrieving dice and triggering all sorts of cool bonuses, and you will generally crown quite a bit. Especially if you focus on it as your strategy, then you're going to crown quite a lot of cards. But on top of that, you got this little area control thing here where you don't actually fight each other. You just basically build stuff across the board. You try and occupy and dominate by majority of meeples. But otherwise, you don't actually fight each other. It's just a case of I built there first, really. So it's not a particularly interactive game other than people being in the areas you want to be in and, nicking your actions on here. Other than that, you don't really do much with other players. There's a few other little side effects as well. Free tracks that give you bonuses and income. Some shipping tracks, which is another thing you can build. And you've got stuff on your board you can build, like farms, cities, towers, etc. So, there's quite a lot going on, as you can see. And, whatever you do with the cards, resources are quite tight. You won't necessarily be swimming in these resources to build stuff, and you certainly can't do everything in this game, so you've got to be a little bit careful. But the card effects is easily the best part of the game. I love the cards, and I like always focusing on this strategy when I've played it. Yes, the area, and that's sometimes to my downfall, because you can create a lot of decent points with the crowning of cards, but the area control bit just seems to be the dominant strategy. One of the paths on the tracks scores you more victory points when you occupy areas, and it's basically presence and domination. So if you have presence, you get so many points. If you dominate, i.e. you have more than the other players, then you dominate and you get more points. But one particular track that you can level up increases the point value of this, and with towers you can increase it further. It is possible to just completely dominate the game by occupying a bunch of areas, leveling up that track, and just simply going, well, you can't kick me out, and I dominate a few areas and occupy these others. Here's my 40 points or something that I just gained from a region scoring phase. You won't get that kind of points level from crowning cards or other bits, so it's a little bit hard to say that that strategy is not dominated. Area control plus the blue track is somewhat lucrative. The yellow track I don't think is very good. I mean, it gets you some builds, but that's about it. But other than that, a couple of goods, and it lets you level up your special ability tile, which is kind of like a side special power you have that you can make better as the game goes on. But certainly I have not seen, anything, and the red is all about crowning cards, which is my favorite track, but even that pales in comparison to what you can earn from the blue one. It's kind of insane. That being said, still a fun game overall. Now, where's the big problem with this game? Yeah, you remember I said 90 to 150? Even that is pushing it. This is a 3.63 weight game. Now, I don't pay much attention to this rating on Board Game Geek, but this is a very heavy game. I mean, somebody has put a vote for medium light. That person is lying. Or he is trolling, because there is no way in hell's teeth this is a medium-light game. Anybody who believes so is mad. Even to call this medium, I think, is pretty high. I mean, I don't like the terms medium-light and medium-heavy, but this is heavy, or it's medium-heavy. It is not in any way less than the word heavy, okay? This is a lot going on. You've got all these effects to trigger. You've got the area control thing as well. You've got to think about the planning of the dice. There's a ton to do. And the problem is, this makes people think about their turns. Turns take a while. You've got to plan out all the dice allocations. Then you've got to do the whole leveling up the tracks with the dice. Then you've got to take one off at a time and resolve the actions with multiple action points. This is not a 90 to 150 minute game. This is barely a 120 to 180 minute game. 4 players with this, I could see going past the 3-hour mark every single time. Because let's face it, the 3-player games I've played have all taken beyond 3 hours. This game is long. There is a lot of downtime. People have got to think on their turns, and it is difficult to plan ahead in this one, because if somebody takes the thing you want or something like that, it's going to mess you up like crazy. And you've got all these effects to trigger from the palace action, so you could have a turn that takes forever. This is not a quick game, and I think it goes on far too long with far too much downtime for me to get a really good sense of enjoyment out of it, which is a shame because I do enjoy a lot about it. The cards are kind of like the bulk of the mechanisms, and I love the coin bur mechanic, so I like that in itself. But I might even have to just drop that I don't know why I'm on my own personal thing, but I might drop that to a 6 for now. I mean, this is first impressions, but that length is a big killer. I mean, there's a decent amount of rules you've got to teach. This is not a short rules teach. Not quite as bad as some other heavy games, but certainly not light either. And it does look the business. I mean, it is well produced for a retail copy game. But that is a long time to play this game, and I worry that this might literally only be a 1 to 2 player game. 3 even, I think, is too long. I mean, look at this. Community, 1 to 3, best with 2. Now, granted, not a lot of people have voted on it, because only so many people have played the game. I mean, what we got here? Vote 17? How do you have total voters with 17, but then there's 9, 15, 14? I don't quite get how this works. But, not recommended. A lot of people do not recommend this game with 4. I don't even know why they put more than 4. That's not even physically possible. And then people actually vote on it. Why, you morons? But even then, 3. Very few people in the list are saying like, oh, this is best. They say recommended with 3. I don't even know if 3 is recommended. Because you usually have 2 people sort of getting each other's way in the area control, and then one person just gets away with it. But yeah, this does feel like a 1 to 2 player game, which is not to say that means there's no market for it, but am I going to want this game for a solo game only? I don't know. And I don't play 2-player games often, but 3 takes so long that I just don't want to try this with 4. I am like dreading the time when I might have to play this with 4. It could be one of the worst experiences of my life. And there's no other way to speed it up because it's not a game that you can speed up, really. So there is that detriment that it has, and it's quite a big solid detriment where like half the player count I'm put off from trying it. But it does have, and I've only logged one player of it. I need to log another one actually because I know I've played it twice. In fact, why don't we do that now? I usually forget to do this lot, but let's see. HandyCon was, yes, I played it on the Saturday, so there we go. But yeah, I don't remember to log my plays very often, to be perfectly honest. Half the time I forget. Here, I don't get the BG stats as a thing with the app. I just don't get it. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, the thing with this is that length is a big killer. With the rules teach, the rulebook's not particularly great either. I mean, I tried to self-teach it from the rulebook at first, and granted, I was starting to become susceptible to COVID at the time, but man, it was a bit of a slog to get through it from teaching from the rulebook, and then you had to add the massive length of the game as it is. It's not a short affair. It's not an easy affair, and I'm worried that that's going to put a lot of people off, because you're going to see this really colourful cover, which does look amazing, and you're going to see, in terms of artwork, and you're going to see this beautiful looking board and all these wooden pieces, and you're going to think, oh yeah, this is quite a lightish game, and it really, really is not. So we'll find out more in a late run. I think this is going to be one that I review in the new year, because by the time I get a copy, I think it will be too close to the cruise, and I won't be in a position. I mean, unless it arrives in the next week or two tops, and then I can give it the beans in the same week, maybe, because I have already played it twice, so that's already part of the way there. But yeah, I have a feeling that I'm not going to get it for a while, and it will be probably a 2025 January review. So it might take a while, but we'll just have to see. Right. And let's say, finally, let's look at Lands of Evershade. Now, I am going to do a full preview of this, so I'm not going to say too much here now. But Lands of Evershade is a game that I demoed with Paul Grogan at Essen. This is Awakened Realms' new story-driven narrative game. It's sort of RPG-esque, story-based, and new setting, new gritty world. Artwork, fantastic. It's the same artist, I think, that did Tainted Grail, or if it's not, it's bloody similar. But it's looks gorgeous, and it's obviously going to be heavily story based. Now, I have it right underneath here. I have been playing through, I think I've pretty much finished now, I'm almost there, the first adventure, and we got given, basically it comes out in like multiple adventures, and you'll have, each adventure is essentially 3 acts with chapters, and each chapter can be played separately so that you're not spending hours and hours and hours on the same chapter like you might do in some of the other games. It's meant to be more able to deal with in bite-sized chunks. Now, I can't speak about the save function because technically there isn't one in the prototype. We are playing a prototype at the moment, so all of this is prototype components, but we had enough to do like most of one adventure, and I'm certainly not going to be spoiling plot elements in the preview, or at least not. I mean, there will be some combats I might spoil to illustrate how the combat works, but I'm not going to spoil anything about the ending chapter or anything. In fact, we got told specifically not to do that. But this is basically one of those cases of create a character, go through the story, and instead of what do you call it, like a spiral bound book like you might get, instead you have this tracker piece in the middle that you can put a timer mechanism on and mark out story bits that you get given. But you have these sheets that you basically put on to either side. So sheet 5 here gives you a city of Whitewell, and it gives you some special rules, and you can move around this map and explore storybook numbers. So storybook 600, storybook 500. Think the Tainted Grail adventures book. It's basically that system. But then you've also got can I go over here? You've got sheets that are, can I get to the right hand side? Probably not. Well, whatever. But you can see there in the top right, that's a combat scenario sheet. So all your characters are on there, and they're fighting in a combat, and different things are happening on different maps. Storybook stuff, there's an app which you can use instead of the main book, but then they've also got voice narration. So just like with the Tainted Grail one, they'll have voice narration for this, and like ISS Vanguard and stuff, and the voice narration is top notch. The writing is top notch. I mean, it's the same style of writing that you got with Tainted Grail, so all of that is really good from an immersion factor. The whole setting is quite interesting, actually. I mean, I don't want to, I can only sort of explain so much, but to put it simply, basically you've got this landscape which is protected by a sort of cloud veil above it, because the sun got to a point where basically the sun just erodes whatever it touches. So if you stand out in the sun, you'll burn to a crisp, you'll decay, land and buildings just basically fall to ruin or something. The sun is just basically a killer. Now, you're not vampires, but anything would die in the sun. Like, nothing would survive in it. It's not vampires or anything, it's just sun bad. Don't go near it. And the veil is kind of failing in some places. You get sun sort of breaching through, like that particular place I showed you was Whitewell, I think it's called. City of Whitewell. Can you see that picture? Yeah, yes. So you can see that there's a big pit in the middle there, and there's like a beam of light coming through. That's one of the bits where the veil's lifted. So the veil doesn't work in this very small bit of its veil where light can get through, and over the course of a couple of centuries or whatever, the light has basically drilled a giant hole in the middle of the city, and you can't go anywhere near it in like dawn till dusk, because you will just incinerate. So it's kind of a cool setting. I mean, it's not quite as dark and gritty as Tainted Grail, but it's still a fairly dark area. There's still like some dubious decisions you might have to make with your party, and there's obviously, monsters and characters and different races and things like that. But yeah, this one seems like another cool setting. Now, how does it differ from something like Tainted Grail? Well, a lot of it is going down more the kind of D&D player's handbook thing. So you actually get a player's handbook. I wonder if I can reach it here and show it on camera. So you've got this thing as a separate thing for creating your character, and when you read it, it's like prototype at the moment, so it's not fully full, but it gives you all the details about the lore and what Evershade is. It then takes you step by step through creating a character. So you've got races, you've got origins, you've got professions, you've got secret origins, you've got advancements and things like that. And depending on which profession you might take, there could be two different paths for that profession. So if you're a hunter, you could be a tracker or an archer. They function very differently, but they are still hunters. You've got different races. So you've got the Bolgrim, which are like big half giant orc things. Best combination. Alf, which is kind of like an elf. I mean, there's certainly borrowing heavily from D&D licenses. I mean, a dwerg is basically a dwarf. An elf is basically an elf. There is a human, and the Bolgrim is basically an orc. You can tell they've been heavily influenced by natural, fantastical stuff. But you can do some good variety with these. I mean, this is a dwarf fighter that they've got here, which you might think is pretty typical. Yeah, dwarf fighter, high strength, whatever. You could happily create a dwarf wizard if you want to, or a dwarf druid, or a dwarf archer. I mean, you don't need to stick to stereotypes. They give you a lot of flexibility with your origin and your profession and your lifestyle type choices. So you want to be an arcane academy trained battle wizard paladin dwarf or something, then by all means go ahead and do it, And this is just the stuff that's in the book. I mean, there was 4 races, 4 professions, 8 skill sets, or 8 lifestyle choices. Are you a citizen? Are you a hermit? That kind of thing. And that was just what was in this book for the prototype. There's going to be more. There's going to be more races. There's going to be more professions. So you got a lot of variety with the character creation. And in advancements, you've got you gain experience, and then you gain advances, and you get more skills based on which tree you want to upgrade. So there's a lot of character creation and customization, much like a D&D game. So there's definitely more emphasis on that, because you had some character creation and customization in Tainted Grail and ISS Vanguard, but it was more limited. Like, you had the character and then you tweaked a few things about it, but that was kind of it. You didn't do a ton of customization. Well, here you get quite a bit more. You can really play this with fundamentally different characters from time to time. But and that all sounds good. I mean, it's got great story, great writing, good artwork, and a good character customization. This I particularly like, though. This is a skill. You roll d10s basically for a lot of your checks, and it's one of those things of roll based on your attribute, +1 die if you have a particular keyword, so close combat, warfare, investigation, city, born, that kind of thing. But this hotbar here on the right is how the combat tends to work. You have the items that you have and some of the things you collect will give you these attack and defense cards, and you slot them into your hotbar, and you have to rest in order to jiggle them around. So you have to kind of create your hotbar effectively. But when you're in combat, the card tells you exactly how the ability works. Tells you its type, tells you its keywords, tells you its damage, what you roll, what its range is. It's got the little grid there. So all the rules are kind of in front of you. You don't have to check the rule book that often. Now, I had to a little bit when I was playing this prototype. That's because the prototype rules are still in effect and not everything's written down. But with a lot of information in front of you, it should minimize how much you're rulebook checking. But the combat works in a similar fashion to, a typical D&D game. So, you've got miniatures on a map and you've got range and line of sight, although it's done a lot more simpler than usual. So you don't have, line of sight is basically you can see everything on the sheet. You don't have to think, oh, right, you're in my way and you can't see me if you're there and things like that. It keeps it very straightforward. So you haven't got to mess around with that. Now, yes, you can see everything on the map, but there is still cover. And if you're next to cover, then it might increase your chances of resisting damage or your chances to hit or stuff like that. So cover still plays a part, but you're not out of the line of sight of people. Like, people can still hit you from afar. So you have to kind of inject your own sort of workings as to how that works, but you don't suddenly get like massive impassable things like blocking your line of sight. Now, that being said, it does mean that you do take quite a bit of damage, but what happens is you have defensive cards on your hotbar that you can trigger in order to survive the combat. So if I can find that setup again, is that the one I need? This will do. Can I? Yep, here we go. Oh, come on, stupid Google. Here we go. This has got to work. Yeah, so for example, you've got attack, charge, heavy strike. Sorry. But then you've got dodge and endurance and stuff. And so as a defensive reaction, if somebody hits you, then you can dodge, you can try to roll and mitigate the damage. You always hit. There's no roll to hit in this game. So you and the enemy just hit. It's a case of how much damage you successfully do. And the same from them. They will do max damage to you unless you use a reaction card to mitigate it. But they flip over when you use them. And there's a bag draw system for initiative. So you draw white and black tokens. The black is the enemy, the white is you, and then you've got these dual ones that you have to alternate each time you use them. So it's up to you how you want the initiative to play out with those. But your cards don't refresh until you activate again. So if you go first in one round and then go last in the next round, you won't refresh your stuff for a long time. And I do notice that this does make combat quite tricky. You can take a lot of damage and you don't have that many hit points. Now, all you need to do later on is rest and you'll get all your HP back. So it's easy to heal yourself. But in combat, if you're not careful with your defensive cards and your positioning, you could get swarmed and just completely owned without even by like basic goons. Elite enemies will hurt you like crazy and you only have so many ways to mitigate the damage. Now, a lot of these areas have arena actions that you can do. So, for example, slight spoiler alert, you're lowered down on a lift at one point, and you're on two sides, and as well as attacking each other, there's also ways to push the planks off so that they can't approach you from all three different areas. There's also ways to push people off the lift so they automatically get killed. There's also ways to shoot and take out one of the ropes holding the lift up, in which case it could tilt the thing and people could fall off. So there are ways in combat to try and mitigate the difficulty curve. Like just trying to straight out take out enemies one by one, including elites, is liable to just get you killed. You've got to use those arena actions. You've got to use you've got to prepare for fights. So when you're exploring the underground, take note of stuff you find, because that stuff you find could make the upcoming fight or battle a lot easier. But if you go into a situation unprepared, or you just glance at stuff and don't take the time to research or whatever, you could find yourself in a bit of a pickle. And I was playing two-handed. It's very easy to play two-handed. There's not a lot of piloting. You've just got two miniatures and a character sheet, effectively, and like some cards. It's nowhere near as complicated a combat as, say, Tainted Grail was. Tainted Grail had a pretty complex like card system it used. Some people like it, some people hate it, but this is very straightforward. You just you do two actions when you activate. The cards are what you can do. It tells you what they do. You don't roll the hit, you just do the damage, roll your checks. It's really it's a very streamlined experience. And I think that's the main thing I'll say about Evershade in general. It's got the same great immersion, writing, story, and all that lot that you expect from Awakened Realms. But this feels like a better entry point. I mean, yeah, there's a reasonable amount, there's not tons of rules, but you've got a handbook to guide you through character creation. You've got the sheets that tell you most of what they need to do. You've got the normal story handbook, and then you'll have the normal rule book. But a lot of information is written on cards, and it felt like it was an easier one to learn. Now, they've got to finish off bits. There were bits in the rulebook that weren't explained or weren't clarified because it was a prototype rulebook. So I had to kind of house rule a few things now and again, particularly when it came to things like combat. But for the most part, everything was kind of there, and I've enjoyed my time with it. So, I'll do an official preview video when my voice recovers, and I've got to do it soon anyway, because I think the Kickstarter is coming out in about 10 or so days, so I do have a short space of time to do it. But I'll explain more at that point. But yeah, so far this is impressing me. I played a game with Paul Grogan at Essen. We had a good time. I wonder if they've actually put it on their website. I have no idea. If they have put up Essen video content, then by all means watch it, because then you get to see myself and Paul Grogan have fun with the scenario. Me joking around a bit and Paul sort of failing rolls and stuff. So it's all pretty good. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm very keen to see where this one goes. I think this could be one of the easier, I think this could be one of the most accessible games that Awakened Realms has put out for their story ones. Like, it doesn't require anywhere near the amount of rules and prep and piloting as ISS Vanguard does. It isn't anywhere near as grindy or, rules intensive or anything like that as Tainted Grail. This is much more streamlined, much more accessible, and I think for a lot of people this could be their ticket into a really good story-driven game, because all that stuff is there in spades. Very excited to see how this one pans out. I'll let you know in the preview when I do it. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on this one if you're looking for another story-based game at some point. When are they going to release this? Is it planned to be 2025? I think they're at a stage they could. Yeah, it looks like it's 2025, so we could be looking at an Essen release for 25, depending on the Kickstarter. So, yeah, keep an eye on this one. Hybrid RPG board game experience, 1 to 5 players. I think 5 players might be a bit much, to be honest, with this one. I think playing it with 2 or 3 would be good. A full party of 4, great. That supposedly you will be able to play this true solo without having to use 2 characters. Please, because the other games weren't very good at true solo compared to two-handed. So, as much as I love them, I did play them true solo, but they had problems with true solo. This one needs to get true solo right, so you better do it. Unfortunately, the prototype didn't allow for true solo, so I haven't seen it for myself. But yeah, some good stuff there. All right, that's it. 52 minutes, and my throat is really going, so I'm going to wrap it up there, get this one edited and out. So, thanks for everybody who has been patient while I've been away. Normal service will resume up until the cruise, and then you'll have to wait until 2025. But yeah, some cool stuff coming from Essen, and some cool stuff on the horizon, more stuff to play. I got a lot of games to play. I am trying to fit in the time, and it's doable. I mean, I can play solo here fine, and I've got several game clubs that I can go at, but sometimes I have to invite people around and basically just say, look, we're going to play this game and give it the beans, can we have your thoughts and stuff? So there's a lot of stuff, and obviously HandyCon was great because I played a lot of games there, and GridCon is coming up, so I'm going to play a lot of games there. So, there's definitely, a lot of time being spent on these games, but it's good to dive into some, because we've had some belters, we've had some mediocre stuff, but all in all, not too bad. Now, one thing about that. Normally, I do a top 10 of the year. I will still do a top 10 of the year. But usually, a lot of people like to get theirs out in December. It's kind of the norm. For once, I will not be doing that. Because I'm not going to do a top 10 of the year on the 7th of December. That is too much to edit, too much to do on top of the games, and that's just too early to do that. So I will delay my top 10 of the year until 2025 January. Okay, we will do that before I think about top 100 or anything like that. But, I mean, come on, you can wait a few weeks, can't you? It's not like it's going to kill the views or anything. 2023 will officially finish in full before I do the top 10 list. It's just got to be a thing this year. There's just not enough time. But yeah, that's it for me on this episode of the Broken Meeple. Hope you've enjoyed listening, and thanks for being patient. Thanks for your support. Thanks for the kind comments. I've certainly received quite a lot of those lately with all the health and COVID stuff. So, I'm very grateful for that. But I got to go and sort out more stuff, and obviously play more games. Finish this Evershade game and finish the Unconscious Mind review that I know a lot of you have been waiting for. So, keep in mind, there's a lot of stuff coming, so just bear with me and you'll be rewarded. So take care, and remember, it's only a game. Bye for now. Love you all.